What if I told you that right now, you might be living in a place that's slowly destroying your soul? Not a physical place, but something far more dangerous. A psychological prison that feels like home. Carl Jung, the brilliant Swiss psychiatrist who unlocked the mysteries of the human mind, discovered something terrifying. He found that our greatest enemy isn't outside of us. It's not failure, rejection, or even death. It's the invisible spaces within our own consciousness where we unknowingly trap ourselves. These aren't just negative thoughts or bad moods. They are entire psychological landscapes that swallow people whole, sometimes for decades, sometimes forever. Jung spent his life mapping the human psyche, and what he found should shake you. There are 7 specific places where the human soul goes to die. Places where growth stops, hope fades, and life becomes a slow march toward emotional death. And the most frightening part, most people don't even realize they're there. Today, we're going to explore these 7 psychological danger zones. Not just to understand them, but to recognize them, because recognition is the first step to escape, and escape is the first step to freedom. 1. The house of denial, where your shadow rules your life. Picture a house where every mirror is covered, every window is boarded up, and every door leads to the same room. This is the house of denial, and it might be where you've been living without knowing it. Jung discovered something that most people spend their entire lives running from. He called it the shadow. Your shadow isn't evil. It's simply everything about yourself that you refuse to see. Your anger when you pretend to be calm, your jealousy when you claim to be happy for others, your selfishness when you present yourself as generous, your fears when you act fearless. But here's what makes denial so deadly. When you refuse to see your shadow, it doesn't disappear. It gets stronger. It starts making decisions for you. You'll find yourself exploding over small things and not knowing why. You'll sabotage relationships that matter and blame everyone else. You'll keep attracting the same toxic people, the same painful situations, the same crushing disappointments over and over again. Jung said something that will haunt you. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read that again. Your shadow is writing your story while you sleep. Every pattern you can't break, every cycle you can't escape, every self-destructive choice you make without understanding why. That's your shadow at work. The house of denial feels safe because it protects you from uncomfortable truths. But safety is an illusion. You're not safe from your shadow. You're its prisoner, and the longer you stay, the smaller your world becomes until you're living in a single room, wondering why life feels so suffocating. But Jung also gave us hope. He called the integration of shadow individuation, the process of becoming whole. And it starts with one terrifying, liberating act, looking in the mirror without flinching. When you can see your darkness without running, it loses its power over you. When you can admit your flaws without drowning in shame, you stop being their victim. The shadow you acknowledge is the shadow you control. But the shadow you deny controls you. And if you're tired of living the same story over and over, maybe it's time to turn on the lights. Yet knowing your shadow is only the beginning, because there's another place where souls go to rot. 2. The swamp of resentment, where pain turns to poison. Have you ever noticed how some people carry their hurt like a badge of honor? How they tell the same stories of betrayal, abandonment, and injustice year after year, as if the pain gives them identity? Welcome to the swamp of resentment, where wounds never heal because they're never allowed to. Jung understood that suffering, when faced consciously, can transform us. Pain can teach us compassion. Betrayal can teach us boundaries. Loss can teach us what truly matters. But when pain is nursed, protected, and fed daily, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes poison. Resentment is pain that has curdled. It's the story you keep telling yourself about how you were wronged, how you were forgotten, how you deserve better. And like any swamp, the longer you stay, the harder it becomes to move. Every step feels heavier, every breath feels thicker, everything becomes about the hurt. You start to build your entire identity around your wounds. This always happens to me. People never change. They'll regret how they treated me someday. But here's the brutal truth. Resentment never punishes the person who hurt you. It punishes you. It turns you into the very thing you hate. Bitter, closed off, suspicious of love. The most tragic part? You might not even realize you're doing it. You think you're protecting yourself, but you're actually poisoning yourself. You become allergic to joy because joy feels like betrayal of your pain. You become suspicious of kindness because kindness feels like a trap. You become incapable of intimacy because intimacy requires the very vulnerability that hurt you in the first place. Jung called the transformation of pain the alchemy of the psyche, turning emotional lead into gold. But this alchemy requires something that feels impossible when you're drowning in resentment. Letting go. Not forgetting. Not pretending it didn't happen, but refusing to let the past write your future. Forgiveness isn't about them. It's about you. It's about reclaiming your energy from the past and investing it in your future. It's about saying, "This happened, it hurt, but I will not let it be the only story I tell about my life." The swamp will always whisper that your pain makes you special, that your anger makes you righteous, that your resentment keeps you safe. But Jung knew better. He knew that the soul was not meant to marinate in its own wounds. It was meant to heal, to grow, to transform. But even when we escape resentment, there's an even more insidious prison waiting. 3. The prison of guilt and shame, where you become your own worst enemy. There's a difference between guilt and shame that most people never understand, and it's the difference between healing and hell. Guilt says, "I made a mistake." Shame says, "I am the mistake." And if you've been living in the prison of shame, you know exactly what I mean. This prison has no bars, no guards, no locked doors, but it's the most secure prison ever built because you are both the prisoner and the warden. You've convinced yourself that you deserve to be there, that you're fundamentally broken, that you're unworthy of love, success, or happiness, that you need to earn the right to exist. Jung saw shame as one of the most dangerous psychological states, not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet. It doesn't scream, it whispers, it hides in the corners of your consciousness, shaping every decision, poisoning every achievement, undermining every relationship. People living in this prison often look successful from the outside. They work harder than everyone else, achieve more than most, smile in all the right places. But inside, they carry a secret conviction that they're frauds, that they don't deserve their success, that someday everyone will discover the truth about how broken they really are. No achievement feels enough because the person achieving it feels like nothing. No love feels real because the person receiving it feels unlovable. No forgiveness penetrates because the person needing it can't forgive themselves. This is the cruelest trick of shame. It disconnects you from your own soul. It tells you that you must become someone else to be acceptable, even to yourself. You spend your life auditioning for approval from a judge who will never be satisfied because that judge is you. But Jung offered a radical alternative. He didn't encourage indulgence or excuse wrongdoing, but he warned against eternal self-punishment. He knew that the psyche needs space to evolve, and it cannot evolve in a cell of constant self-judgment. True remorse leads to growth. It leads to repair, to responsibility, to wisdom. But shame, persistent, relentless shame, leads to paralysis. It leads to a life half-lived, a potential never realized, a soul that never learns to breathe. If you're reading this and feeling the weight of that prison, hear this. Your mistakes are not your identity. Your past is not your destiny. The voice telling you that you're not enough is not your voice. It's an echo from wounds that have nothing to do with who you really are. But even if you escape the prison of shame, there's another trap that catches millions of souls. 4. The theater of persona, where you lose yourself playing a role. Imagine spending your entire life on a stage, playing a character you never chose, in a story you never wanted to tell, for an audience that will never be satisfied. This is the theater of persona, and the tragedy is that most people don't even realize they're performing. Jung introduced the concept of persona, the social mask we wear to navigate the world, and masks aren't inherently bad. We all need them. We speak differently to our boss than to our best friend. We dress differently for a funeral than for a party. These adjustments are normal, even necessary. But somewhere along the way, many people make a fatal mistake. They forget that the mask is just a mask. They start believing that the character they play is who they really are. The performance becomes their identity. The stage becomes their home. And their authentic self, their desires, their pain, their dreams, their chaos, gets buried so deep they forget it ever existed. You start saying yes when you mean no. You smile when you want to cry. You agree when your soul screams in protest. You dress, speak, and behave not to express yourself, but to maintain approval. And slowly, without noticing, the real you disappears. In this theater, authenticity isn't just absent, it's dangerous. To show your true self would risk rejection, criticism, abandonment. So you keep performing, keep smiling, keep pretending, until one day you wake up exhausted, numb, and desperately empty, wondering why nothing feels real anymore. Jung warned that no one can become whole while living a lie. The path to psychological maturity, what he called individuation, requires us to remove the mask piece by piece and ask the most terrifying question of all: who am I really when no one is watching? The answer might surprise you. You might discover that you're braver than your mask suggests. You might find that you're more creative, more passionate, more interesting than the character you've been playing. You might realize that the very things you've been hiding are the things that make you most lovable. If you're finding value in this exploration so far, consider subscribing to the channel to join others on this journey of psychological discovery. We're diving deep into the places most people never dare to explore. Now let's get back to exploring the other places you should avoid. 5. The Labyrinth of Overthinking, where thoughts become chains. Your mind is supposed to be a tool, but what happens when the tool starts using you? Welcome to the Labyrinth of Overthinking, where brilliant people go to get lost, where intelligence becomes a prison, and where the search for answers becomes the very thing that prevents you from living. This isn't about being smart or analytical. This is about being trapped in an endless loop of mental activity that leads nowhere. You think about your problems without solving them. You analyze your feelings without feeling them. You plan your future without living your present. You review your past without learning from it. Jung emphasized the importance of what he called the irrational aspects of the psyche: intuition, emotion, symbol, and the unconscious. He knew that the most profound truths don't come from thinking, but from feeling, from dreaming, from the mysterious depths of the soul that speak in metaphor, not logic. But in the labyrinth of overthinking, these deeper voices are drowned out by mental noise. You become addicted to analysis because it gives you the illusion of control. You think that if you can just understand everything perfectly, you can avoid pain, predict outcomes, and control the uncontrollable. The result? Decision paralysis. You can't choose because no choice feels perfect. Emotional numbness. You can't feel because feeling seems irrational. Spiritual disconnection. You can't trust your instincts because they don't come with logical explanations. You end up living in your head instead of in your life. You think about calling that friend instead of calling them. You analyze whether you love someone instead of loving them. You plan to start living instead of starting to live. Jung would say, the psyche does not speak in equations. It speaks in images, symbols, feelings, and dreams. But when you're lost in the labyrinth, you can't hear these deeper voices. You're too busy thinking about thinking. The way out isn't more thinking. It's courage. The courage to act without having all the answers. The courage to feel without understanding why. The courage to trust the part of you that knows things your mind cannot comprehend. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is stop being so intelligent. Sometimes wisdom isn't knowing everything. It's knowing when to stop thinking and start living. But even if you escape the labyrinth of your own mind, there's another place of exile that millions call home. 6. The desert of isolation, where connection dies. There's a place many wounded souls retreat to when the world feels too dangerous, too painful, too unpredictable. It's a psychological desert, vast, empty, and utterly silent. At first, it feels like sanctuary. No expectations, no disappointments, no betrayals. Just you, alone, safe from the chaos of human connection. But deserts, as beautiful as they can be, are not places where life thrives, and the human soul, Jung knew, was not designed to flourish in isolation. We are wounded in relationship, and we are healed in relationship. We discover who we are not in solitude, but in the sacred friction of connection with others. In this desert, vulnerability becomes the enemy. You become excessively self-reliant, emotionally guarded, and deeply suspicious of intimacy. You tell yourself that you don't need anyone, that people are dangerous, that love is a luxury you can't afford. And for a while, this might even feel empowering. But slowly, the silence becomes unbearable. The solitude that once felt sacred begins to feel like exile. You realize that you haven't just been protecting yourself from others. You've been protecting yourself from the parts of yourself that feel unworthy of being seen. The cruel irony is that the very connections you're avoiding are the ones you need most. You need someone to witness your struggles and not run away. You need someone to see your flaws and choose to stay. You need someone to challenge you, support you, and remind you that you're not as alone as you think. Jung understood that we don't become fully human until we can stand in front of another soul and say, "Here I am, imperfect, real, still worthy of love." Shadow work is necessary. Self-discovery is crucial. But we don't heal in isolation. We heal in connection. Yes, connection opens you to pain, but it also opens you to joy, to growth, to the kind of love that transforms everything. The soul wasn't made to survive alone. It was made to belong. But even connection can't save you from the final and perhaps most dangerous place of all. 7. The graveyard of the past, where the present goes to die. There's one last place where souls go to waste away, and it might be the most seductive of all. It's the graveyard of the past, where people go not just to remember, but to live. Where yesterday becomes more real than today, and tomorrow becomes impossible. This place feels sacred at first. It seems noble to mourn, honorable to remember, loyal to hold on to what you've lost. But there's a difference between honoring the past and being buried by it. There's a difference between learning from history and being trapped by it. In this graveyard, you become a ghost haunting your own life. You replay conversations that ended years ago. You rehearse arguments with people who are no longer listening. You mourn relationships that died, dreams that failed, opportunities that passed. And while you're kneeling at these graves, life keeps moving forward without you. The mind becomes a museum of regrets. If only I had said this. If only I had done that. If only I'd been braver, smarter, different. But Jung knew something that people in this graveyard forget. There is no life in the past. There are lessons, yes. There is wisdom, certainly. But there is no breath, no heartbeat, no possibility. The tragedy is that while you're trying to resurrect what's already dead, you're killing what's still alive. The present moment, the only moment where life actually happens, becomes a blur, ignored, unlived, unloved. Jung believed that the psyche is always calling us toward wholeness, and wholeness can only happen now, in this moment. But if you're facing backward, you miss the doors opening in front of you. You miss the people trying to love you. You miss the opportunities trying to find you. You miss your own life. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring the past without becoming it. It means learning to say goodbye, not just to people, but to versions of yourself that no longer serve your journey. It means accepting that some chapters have ended so that new ones can begin. The past will always whisper that it needs you, that it deserves your constant attention, that forgetting means betrayal. But Jung knew better. He knew that life is not found in clinging to what was. It is found in becoming who you are meant to be, here, now, fully awake. These 7 places, they all have one thing in common. They shrink you. They make you smaller than you are, weaker than you could be, less alive than you deserve to be. But here's what Jung also knew. Recognition is the beginning of liberation. Now that you can see these places, you can choose to leave them, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready, but now. Because every moment you spend in these psychological prisons is a moment stolen from the life you could be living. Your soul was not meant to dwell in darkness. It was meant to grow, to expand, to become everything it has the potential to be. And that journey begins the moment you decide that where you are is not where you belong. If you found value in these insights, consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. And remember, the question is not whether you've been in these places. The question is, are you ready to leave?